Hey guys, thanks for clicking on this video. Welcome to the channel. Since the launch of Year 5 Season 1 Void Edge, I've had quite a few friends decide that they wanted to get into Siege. Problem is, Siege can be quite daunting and confusing for newcomers. So I've decided to make this little breakdown video for not only them, but for all of you legends as well. Now this video is going to be targeted at mostly brand new players, but if there's anything that you guys want covered that I missed or you're just interested in, leave a comment below and I'll get onto it. So without any more delay, here is the ultimate noob's guide to Rainbow Six Siege. Now you guys can head on down to the description for timestamps on every topic of the video if you'd like to skip to something in particular that you're here for. Otherwise, I'll begin with settings. Now keep in mind that this part of the video is going to be very different for everyone. Each player is different and therefore certain settings are going to be subject to change depending on that player. I can only give you guys my 2 cents on the subject. Remember, there is no wrong answer. Firstly, I'd like to talk about aspect ratio. The game's default is 16:9, which is completely fine, and a lot of people have run with that. It is, however, worth mentioning that a lot of people choose to play in either 4:3 or 5:4. But why is that? Personally, I switched to 4:3 as an experiment and have never gone back. Playing with a stretched screen, if you will, can potentially improve your game in the sense that wider heads equals easier headshots. But bear in mind that this is totally a personal preference thing. I don't believe playing with a different aspect ratio is going to improve the aim of every player, but I can tell you that since switching I've been able to improve my KD a lot. So experiment with both and see how your gameplay is affected. Now, I'm not going to bother touching on resolution or VSync since that's all obviously personal settings, so I'm going to skip that. In regards to field of view or FOV, all I can say is putting this setting to the highest point of 90 isn't always the best option. Yes, you can see more and can potentially see enemies more easily or more often, but remember that increasing your FOV can potentially lower your FPS, and since you are seeing much more on your screen, it can also be potentially more difficult to aim. More space on the screen means more room to cover if you need to quickly flick on an enemy. Now for your graphics settings. This will be completely dependent on the sort of system that you're running. However, it's always better to run the lowest settings in most regards, since the lower you put the settings, the higher FPS you'll receive. If you want to play properly, you'll always want more FPS rather than the game looking at its best. So I recommend just putting everything to its lowest. And finally, we have controls. The biggest topic here to talk about is sensitivity, which I don't think I need to cover. This is going to be completely dependent on you and how you play. Although, I will say a lower sense is always better. Lower sensitivities give you more control and less randomness with your movement. The other reason I choose not to cover this topic too much is because there's already a heap of awesome videos on YouTube giving in-depth explanations as to how it all works. So instead of rambling on, I'll just link those videos below. Now I'm going to touch on operator kits. Firstly, sights. By far the most popular sight is the ACOG. Amazing for holding long range angles, but it shouldn't be an auto pick on attacking operators. The Holo and Reflex are solid picks on attack, especially for you alphas out there that play 4-3 or 5-4. Choosing a one-time sight gives you more peripheral vision and can at times be a better choice. Personally, I like to pick a sight depending on a map. If I'm playing a map that I like to hold long angles on, I choose ACOG. If it's a map I like to rush in and pick short to medium range angles, I choose either the Holo or the Reflex. Next are barrel attachments. I'm not going to explain each one, since there is a pretty damn good description on what each barrel does in-game already. I will however point out that in the bottom right corner of the screen you can gather some pretty useful information. Recoil patterns for each barrel show up here on this little graph. It'll give you a visual aid as to how each barrel works and how it will feel. Also, take note of the side in which the bullets tend to travel to. If the bullet travels to the right, like in this graph, it means to perfectly control the recoil to one spot, you'll both have to pull your mouse downwards while also moving it to the left to counteract the recoil pattern. Mastery of this will give you the perfect recoil control. And finally we have grips. Honestly, there isn't really too much to say here. Choose the vertical grip if you have trouble controlling recoil. Or choose the angled grip if you're pretty good at controlling recoil and therefore can sacrifice the better handling for a quicker ADS time. Personally, I play both depending on the weapon, and you'll have to try both out to see what works best for you, as each gun is different. But as a blanket rule, I usually pick vertical grip when I'm playing with an ACOG, as it's much harder to control recoil at far distances, and I choose angled for when I use a one-time scope. And now for the fun part, operator breakdowns. Now for the sake of time, I've chosen 10 essential operators that I think every new player should aim to acquire as soon as possible. I feel like these operators in particular will always be good, and are easy for new players to pick up and start fragging with. So let's get into it. First up, we have the dad of the group, Thatch. He has a choice between the AR-33, L85A2 and the meme cannon. Both ARs are a solid choice, although the L85 is far more consistent and overall a better gun in my opinion. That doesn't mean the AR-33 is bad though, so choose by feeling. With handguns, always choose the one that has higher damage. That's just all there is to it really. After that, he has access to breach charges and a claymore. Choose depending on the situation. Thatcher's job is to remove any electrical gadgets that the team or defense is using to hinder your push to site. It's a pretty important job, and like every other operator, I'm going to say this: get your job done before going off and getting killed. I say this because there are so many times where I'll be waiting for Thatcher at a main wall as a thermite to open it, and he runs off and gets killed and instantly makes the round 1,000 times more difficult. So be sure to throw those EMPs before running off and chasing frags. Also keep in mind that the EMPs have a 360-degree AoE effect. Throwing them on the ceiling above sites will usually still work out for you. Up next, we have Four Eyes. He has a choice between the M1014 Shotty and the 556XI AR. The shotgun is a meme, so stick with the AR. Next we choose the M45 as our secondary, and then he has a choice between stun grenades and a claymore. So obviously Thermite is there to open man-sized breaches into the enemy's objectives. He can be stopped by Bandit, Newt and Kaid from doing this, so that's why it's always nice to have a Thatcher paired with them if neither of them are banned. Name a better couple. Oh wait. Bandit or Kaid tricking is something we'll talk about later, but for now just remember that people will try to destroy your Thermite charges before they can go off. To counter this, I recommend always baiting the defensive operator by placing the charge onto the wall and then quickly removing it, and either getting Thatcher to destroy those defensive gadgets or switching which side of the wall you place your charge on to bait the enemy. Also, another handy trick to open a wall that is electrified or jammed is to find a wall that is close to what you're trying to open and place the thermite charge there. Thermite charges are quite powerful and will destroy walls next to those you place the charge on, even if they're reinforced. Now for Twitchy Twitchson. She has a choice between a laser beam, the 417 marksman rifle and the SG Shotty. Although I have seen some people use the marksman rifle and think it is an okay option, especially since the F2 got nerfed, I still believe the F2 is just ridiculous. Just do yourself a favour and pick the F2. Next, she has a choice between the P9 and revolver for secondaries. I know I said pick the handgun with the highest damage, but in this case, pick and play style. If you want to be able to spam your shots, then pick the P9. But if you're confident in landing your taps, or your one taps I should say, go with a revolver. After that, she can bring breach charges or a claymore. There really isn't too much to say about Twitch, other than be careful with a drone if you're trying to play seriously. Since the nerf, the shock drone only does 1 damage per shot, so it's no longer worth it at all to shoot enemies with. So keep a drone safe if you want to get most out of her. Obviously her job is to get rid of as much utility as possible for a team. It's worth mentioning that the shock drone's best used is for destroying Maestro cameras or mirrors. You can destroy Maestro cams with 2 shots, and by shooting a little red gas canister below the mirror, she can open up lines of sight for a team. Pretty damn useful if you ask me.
Both mirrors are open. Yep.
Next up, we have Hibana Hunana. This fidget spinning ninja has access to the Type 89 AR and the Supernova shotgun. As usual, the shotgun is a meme, so stick with the AR. Unfortunately, the Type 89 is nowhere near as good as it used to be, but it's still a solid AR. Just be wary of how small its magazine size is. And when I say small, I mean don't expect to shoot a barricaded door open in one magazine small. Then as a secondary she has a machine pistol, the bearing 9, or the P229. The bearing 9 has some ridiculous recoil, but I urge you to practice with it. It is so much better than the normal pistol. Just remember to use it close to medium range and burst fire if you can. She then has a choice between stuns and breach charges. Even though HIBANA is another hard breacher, the way she is played is completely different to THERMITE. For starters, her fidget spinners can be shot to walls or hatches from a distance. So HIBANA is able to create holes in walls from safety rather than having to potentially expose herself to the enemy team like THERMITE has to. Using her gadget this way can create some pretty unique opportunities for lines of sight on the enemy. Lines of sight they may not expect, like here in these clips where I open up the same spot on coastline in different games, but it still manages to surprise the enemy team. Couple of tips for our fidget spinners. Take note that you need a minimum of 4 of the pellets to be on a hatch for it to be completely destroyed. Anything less than that and it will only partially break. Be wary of enemies trying to destroy your pellets before they go off. Also, get creative with the shapes you decide to make with your gadget. There are so many options. Want to make a man-sized hole so you can run through it? No worries. Want to open 2 separate holes? One to crawl through, and another to vault through? No problemo. Or, do you want to open up a line of sight that looks like you have Cyclops from the X-Men on your team? Forget about it. Now we meet the Lumberjack. Buck has access to the CA Assault Rifle and the Camera's Marksman Rifle. The Marksman Rifle is decent, and with the recent buff to Marksman Rifles it might be a viable choice, but in Siege fire rate is everything, so I recommend the C8. Now while this gun is the better option, it does have some pretty damn ridiculous recoil. Compared to other assault rifles, this one is super hard to control, but with a little practice you'll get used to it. Either that or just use a one-time sight. He then has the MK1 pistol and a choice between stuns and frags. Always choose frags. Making things go boom boom is really, really good. Buck is probably one of the most useful operators in Siege, full stop. His underbarrel shotgun enables him to be super useful as a soft breach operator, especially since compared to Sledge, he can do this from a distance. I highly recommend trying to learn the maps to the point you know which rooms are above or below the most popular sites. This knowledge opens up so many doors for you in terms of vertical play, and trust me when I say, when you start implementing vertical play into your gameplay, your skills in KD will skyrocket. Now we switch sides to defense, and I've decided to break down both Rook and Doc since they're essentially the same in terms of kits and how they're played. They both have access to the P90 SMG, the MP5, and SG shotgun. The MP5 is king in this situation, but the P90 isn't half bad at times, to be honest. Like Twitch, they also have access to the P9 and the revolver, with Rook having access to impact grenades and barbed wire, while Doc can have either a bulletproof camera or barbed wire. Both Rook and Doc are categorized in the role of anchor, which essentially means operators that stay on site as the last line of defense against the attacking team. The reason they are anchors is because they are both 1 speed 3 armor operators, which means they can't traverse the map quickly or efficiently. You can hear these guys running around from a mile away. In saying that, they are some of the very small pool of ops on the defensive side that have access to the ACOG as a site, which in turn makes them great choices for anyone looking to spawn peek. I will however recommend that if you do choose to run off and either roam or spawn peek with either of these ops, to choose Rook. If you die straight away as Doc, you've done pretty much nothing for your team. Whereas if you die as Rook, you've at least done your job by putting the armor down at the start of the round. So at least you can say you did something. Up next, we have Pikachu. Bandit has access to the MP7 SMG, and the M870 shotgun. While the M870 is a meme, it's a good meme, and super fun to use. But the MP7 is one of the best SMGs in the game. It's so easy to use and has a high fire rate. You honestly couldn't ask for much more. Then he wields the P12 and a choice between barbed wire and a nitro cell. Bandit can place his batteries against deployable shields or in barbed wire to electrify them. But the best use for his batteries is to stop thermite and HIBANA charges from opening up main walls and sight. Now, chiming in on what we spoke about earlier, putting the batteries straight down on the floor and leaving them there isn't the best thing to do, since Thatcher can just throw his EMPs at the wall and all of a sudden they're free to open the wall up. If you want to get most out of Bandit, then you'll need to learn how to Bandit trick. This means hanging out by the wall while they're trying to open it, and listening to the movement of the attacking operators outside. You'll be able to hear Thermite physically place his charge on the wall, and you'll have to put your battery down at the right time to destroy it. It's a bit easy to do against HIBANA since her pellets take a bit longer to explode,
Nice, bro.
but with a bit of practice it'll become easy. Here's a couple of tips.
Got both thermites.
1. Use a shotgun, or punch a few holes in the wall before reinforcing it. This doesn't make the sound any louder for you, but it does add a bit of bass, which some people, including me, find easier to hear. 2. Look out for blue light at the bottom of the wall. If you missed the sound cue of Thatcher throwing his EMPs, the blue light is a dead giveaway. And 3. Be wary of any drone holes that are next to you. The attacking team may try to nade you from them, or use a Capital with his fiery hell arrows to kill you while you attempt a trick.
I'm the best.
Nice, bro.
I'll just leave him down now.
Next we have Little Miss No Privacy. Val can use the MPX SMG or the SPAS-12. The shotgun isn't too bad at times, but you guessed it, use the SMG. She has a deagle for a secondary which is super sweet, even though it has stupid recoil, and a choice between a deployable shield and a nitro cell. Remember what I said about things that go boom boom? Valk is another one of those operators that's always good. Her kit is decent, and her black eye cameras are amazing at gathering intel for the team. The best part about her gadget is, you can use them to be super helpful for your team, or, if you're feeling spicy and you want to pull off some crazy runouts or roam around the map, you can put them in places that benefit you. Either way, they're super powerful. There are some amazing and sneaky Valk cam spots out there, so get creative and try placing them in spots the attacking team aren't going to be able to find them easily. Shooting soft walls and placing a cam in between is a great way to get the max value out of your cameras as well, as you'll be seeing 2 rooms instead of 1. Remember, you can throw the cameras outside too. This is super useful on maps or sites where rappelling on windows is super strong.
Yeah, I
like on Consular.
Why too. Truthful.
And now for the Silent Assassin. Muty Boy has a choice between the MP5K and the M59. This is one of those weird situations where both options are honestly really good. I love both, but I usually bring the shotgun so I'm able to create rotations with him. The secondaries, you can either use the P226 or the SMG-11. The SMG-11 is the best secondary in the game in my opinion. It has, I think, the highest rate of fire in the game. I'm not 100% on that, but it's an absolute beast. Be wary though, as it also sports one of the most difficult recoil patterns to control. You should still pick it up though, it's a bloody laser. Then you can choose either a nitro cell or a bulletproof camera. As I said, Mute has a choice between 2 pretty damn good primary weapons, so just choose depending on the situation. Repeating myself, I'll say that I bring the shotgun most of the time, so I can make rotations, as Mute is a support type operator. But if you press spacebar during the load screen into the round, you can see what equipment the rest of your team brings. If multiple people are bringing either impact grenades or shotguns, it's better to bring the MP5K, especially if it's on a map with a lot of long angles. The SMG-11 shines in short to medium combat, so this works out pretty nicely. Mute's jammers are super useful. There are so many things they can disrupt or jam for the attacking team, so here's a list for a few. 1. They can obviously jam drones and jam walls. That means no HIBANA or thermite charges. 2. If you're standing within the radius of a jammer, you won't be detected by Lion's gadget. Awesome. 3. Iana's clone will begin to fail once coming into range of a jammer. 4. Jackal's gadget won't work when close to a jammer. The list goes on. Mute is great and is an excellent choice for a support. Also take note that like Thatcher, his jammers have a 360-degree AoE effect. So placing the jammers on top of tables, or in this case laundry machines, can jam attacker equipment from below. And finally, we have everybody's favourite Power Ranger, Jaeger. He has access to the 416C carbine and the M870 shotgun. The choice should be pretty obvious here. He then sports the P12 with a choice between barbed wire and a bulletproof camera. There literally is only one piece of advice needed here, and here it is. Play Jaeger. Yeah, I couldn't be more serious right now, it's literally it. He has one of the best guns on the defensive side, even with a recent damage nerf. It has pretty much no recoil, and paired with him being a 3-speed, he's just an absolute beast, so... Yeah, play Jaeger, get frags, win games. That's all there is to it. I don't have much else to say about him, so here's some clips to show off just how dumb he is.
It's Thermite. One dead.
Now we come to the last part of the video. Gameplay strats and techniques. This section I'll touch briefly on a couple of ideas that newcomers should try to wrap their heads around to improve their gameplay as fast as possible. Firstly, I'll go over maps, specifically map knowledge. Callouts are huge in this game. Having intel can make or break a game of Siege. Being able to give your team callouts makes you 1,000 times more useful in a team. Again, I know that not everyone likes to use a mic, but I implore you to use one. This is, after all, a team-based tactical FPS game. The easiest way to learn callouts is to look at the bottom of your screen. Below the compass, the UI will tell you what room you're in, so you just have to try and remember it. If you're unsure of the particular callout you need to make, just use the compass and tell your team that the direction the enemy's in. Some intel is better than none. Take border for example. There are only 2 sets of stairs, one to the east and one to the west. So calling out that someone is on the east stairs immediately gives your team some pretty good intel. The better you know the maps, the more likely you are to get kills. Having better map knowledge than your opponents enables you to hold angles and kill them from places that they don't expect. This is where spawn peeking comes in. If, like most new players, you hate spawn peekers and think it's toxic, all I can say about that is you need to try and get over it, ASAP. Spawn peeking, while at first may seem like BS, is part of the game, so you need to just get used to it. Once you learn a few for yourself though, you'll see why people do it. It's fun as hell.
You're right.
It makes a bunch of sense.
Makes a lot of sense. And I'm like, bruh. Because I was thinking about it the other day.
I'll fuck with that.
Bro, it's so true. Nice, bro.
I can't believe this beat worked.
It's dog shit.
Wow.
Alright, bro, let's settle down.
That's a clip.
Can I play 2? I don't spawn.
Finally, I'll speak a little bit about aim and gunplay. Firstly, choose your spots wisely. This ties in with map knowledge a bit, but the idea is to try and keep yourself in uncommon positions as much as possible. Being predictable pretty much condemns you to death immediately. There are lots of cheeky parkour spots in this game that you can get to, and there are a bunch of videos on YouTube on how to get to these spots. So I urge you to learn a few for yourself. You'll definitely get some kills this way.
Op 4 has yet to locate a bomb.
Now with a couple of tips and tricks for aim. Firstly, you can obviously melee holes into soft walls to create lines of sight, but sometimes it's better to create bullet holes. These holes are much smaller and not very easily noticed, and can work wonders for you if you're trying to be sneaky. Secondly, crosshair placement. Try and think of it this way. If your crosshair is always at the correct height for a headshot depending if you're anticipating your enemy to be crouched or standing, you need to adjust your aim less to get that juicy headshot, which means you'll be faster, which means you're more likely to win. It's just that simple. You should always be aiming for the head, but if you're coming around corners, try and get used to always having your crosshair at head height. Thirdly, peeking. It should go without saying that running around corners, guns a-blazing, isn't too smart. If you think someone is around a corner, quick peek it, and get back to cover. That 1 second peek should be enough time to see if someone is there or not. Point 4. Pre-fire. Pre-fire everything. Pre-firing is essential in Siege. If you have the intel that your enemy is, say, sitting next to the bomb on site, then peek around the corner and begin to fire your weapon even before you see him. If your intel is good and the enemy is in that spot, you would have sent 3 to 5 bullets at them before they have a chance to react. And with a little luck, one of those bullets will meet with the enemy's head. Lastly, this doesn't really have anything to do with aim, but try and constantly change the angle at which you approach a gunfight. Staying in the same spot is just silly. Try rotating or flanking the enemy. Or, when engaging in a gunfight, stop to reload and change the direction at which you come at the enemy. If you can confuse your opponent, then you've increased your chances of winning. Also, please remember your gadgets. This may seem dumb, but I've witnessed a million teammates fail to clutch a round simply because they forget they have stun grenades or a primary gadget. You'll be surprised at how often this occurs. Alrighty guys, that's all I have for the video. If you've made it to the end, thanks so much for watching. If there's anything you'd like for me to cover, please let me know in the comment section. I haven't created any YouTube content in a long time, but this sparked the love for it back in me, so expect to see more content soon. So please like and subscribe, you know all that jazz. If you'd like to get in contact with me, I also stream regularly on Twitch, so the link is in the description. Until next time guys, remember, never give up and never surrender. Later.
Yeah, yeet.
Yes!